The asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars had become humanity's graveyard 50 years ago. Admiral Rebecca Torres floated in her command chair aboard the hidden station called Haven, watching holographic displays that showed nothing but empty space where Earth once burned bright. The blue marble that had been home to 8 billion humans was now a blackened rock circling the sun like a dead eye. Torres remembered the day the aliens came. 3 massive fleets had emerged from hyperspace. Without warning, their ships gleaming like deadly jewels against the starfield. The Corvan Empire brought 1,000 warships bristling with plasma cannons. The Mithari Confederation arrived with vessels that seemed to bend light around their hulls. The Viridian Collective ships pulsed with psychic energy that made human minds scream in terror. The aliens called themselves the Dominion Coalition. They claimed humanity had violated galactic law by expanding too quickly through space. Earth's colonies on Mars, Europa, and Titan were declared illegal settlements that threatened the established order. The humans had 3 days to surrender, or face total extermination. Earth's leaders tried to negotiate. They offered to limit expansion, to pay tribute, to do whatever was necessary to avoid war. The aliens listened with cold patience before delivering their final judgment. Humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to survive. They had seen what humans could do when pushed to their limits, and they would not risk another species challenging their control of the galaxy. The war lasted 6 months. Humanity threw everything they had at the invaders. Nuclear weapons, kinetic bombardments, even desperate ramming attacks by civilian vessels. Nothing worked. The alien shields absorbed every strike while their return fire carved through human defenses like a hot knife through butter. One by one, Earth's colonies fell silent. The asteroid mining stations went dark. The orbital platforms around Saturn burned like dying stars. Torres had been commanding the Deep Space Patrol when the final assault began. She watched helplessly from the edge of the solar system as the 3 alien fleets surrounded Earth, their weapons fired in perfect coordination, turning the atmosphere into superheated plasma that boiled the oceans and melted the ice caps. Within hours, every city on the planet was a crater filled with molten glass, but Torres had not given up. While Earth died, she gathered every human ship she could find. Civilian transports, mining vessels, research ships, anything that could carry people away from the slaughter. 3 million humans escaped into the darkness between stars, following Torres into a region called the Void Reaches where gravitational anomalies and dark matter storms made normal space travel impossible. The aliens never followed. They declared humanity extinct and returned to their empire to celebrate another successful cleansing operation. The galaxy believed the human threat had been eliminated forever. They were wrong. Haven Station hung in the shadow of a rogue planet that drifted through the cosmic void with no sun to warm it. The station had grown over 5 decades from a collection of refugee ships into a massive orbital city that housed the last remnants of human civilization. Deep inside the station's core, Fleet Marshal David Kane studied holographic battle reports that his teams had been analyzing for 50 years. Kane had been a young officer during the war. He watched his homeworld burn and swore that humanity would never again be caught unprepared. Every tactical decision the aliens made had been recorded and studied. Every weapon they used had been reverse-engineered from debris. Every weakness in their strategy had been identified and cataloged. The Marshal walked through corridors, lined with memorial walls showing the faces of 8 billion dead humans. Each name was a reminder of what had been lost and what needed to be avenged. Children who would never grow up. Scientists who would never make their discoveries. Artists who would never create their masterpieces. All because 3 alien empires decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist, but Kane had learned something important during those dark years. The aliens were right to fear humanity. Not because humans were naturally violent or aggressive, but because they refused to accept defeat. Every other species the Dominion had encountered either surrendered quickly or died quickly. Humans did neither. They adapted, evolved, and came back stronger. Dr. Maria Santos waited in the deep laboratory levels where humanity's greatest secret was taking shape. The Shadow Fleet project had consumed most of Haven Station's resources for the past 2 decades. While the aliens celebrated their victory and expanded their empires, human scientists and engineers had been working on something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Santos activated a holographic display that showed the first completed vessel of the new fleet. The ship was unlike anything humanity had built before. Where human vessels had once been bright and welcoming, this one was dark as the space between stars. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and strange energy patterns flowed along its surface like living shadows. The Reaper-class dreadnought was more than just a warship. It was a weapon of extinction designed to do to alien worlds what they had done to Earth. Its quantum fold drive could phase the ship partially out of normal space, making it invisible to conventional sensors. Its main weapons could crack a planet's crust from orbit or boil away its atmosphere in minutes. Santos had based the design on captured alien technology, but the quantum modifications were purely human innovation. 50 years of studying physics in the strange environment of the void reaches had taught human scientists things that the galaxy's established empires had never imagined. The dark matter storms that made the region uninhabitable had become the key to transcending the normal limits of space and time. Kane joined Santos in the laboratory as the first squadron of Reapers underwent final testing. 12 ships hung in the construction bay, their dark hulls reflecting no light from the work lamps. Each vessel carried enough firepower to destroy a planet, and their quantum drives would let them appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. The Marshal activated his communication system and broadcast to every human on Haven Station. His words reached the survivors in their homes, the workers in the factories, the soldiers training for the coming war. After 50 years of hiding in the darkness, humanity was ready to remind the galaxy why the Dominion had feared them in the first place. The age of human extinction was over. The age of alien extinction was about to begin. The quantum fold drive hummed like a dying star as Commander Alex Rivera felt reality bend around the nightfall. Space twisted and folded in ways that human eyes were never meant to see, colors bleeding into impossible spectrums while time seemed to flow backwards and forwards simultaneously. The Reaper-class vessel slipped between dimensions. Like a ghost passing through walls. Rivera gripped his command chair as the ship emerged from folded space at the edge of the Theros system. The mining world hung before them like a jewel, its surface scarred by decades of industrial excavation. Massive orbital platforms processed rare metals that fed the Corvan war machine, while hundreds of transport ships carried the refined materials to military shipyards throughout the Empire. The Corvan defenders never saw them coming. The nightfall and 11 other Reapers materialized from quantum fold space like shadows given form. Their dark hulls absorbed scanner beams and radar pulses, making them invisible to conventional detection systems. To the alien sensors, they simply did not exist. Lieutenant Commander Beth Walsh monitored the tactical display as 200 Corvan warships scrambled to respond to the unexpected arrival. The alien vessels were impressive by galactic standards, each one bristling with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could deflect most weapons. Against any conventional fleet, they would have been nearly invincible, but the Shadow Fleet was not conventional. Walsh activated Nightfall's primary weapon system and watched as quantum energy built up in the ship's main cannon. The weapon did not fire projectiles or energy beams like normal ship guns. Instead, it manipulated the fundamental forces that held matter together, reaching across space to destabilize the atomic structure of its target. The first Corvan battleship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was accelerating toward the human fleet with guns blazing, the next it was a cloud of constituent atoms drifting through space. The quantum disruption had torn apart every molecule in the vessel, leaving nothing behind but scattered particles and confused radio chatter. Rivera opened a channel to the other Reaper ships and gave the order that would change galactic history. The Shadow Fleet engaged its primary targets not with the desperate fury of refugees seeking revenge, but with the cold precision of exterminators carrying out a necessary task. Theros Prime hung below them like a target waiting to be struck. The planet housed 50 million Corvan civilians who worked in the mines and processing facilities. They had families and dreams just like humans once did. They laughed and loved and hoped for better futures for their children. Rivera thought about the 8 billion humans who had died when the Corvan fleets reduced Earth to molten glass. He remembered the children's faces on Haven Station's memorial walls. He recalled the desperate broadcasts from Earth's final hours as mothers called out for their babies while the atmosphere burned around them. The Nightfall's quantum cannon aligned with the planet's core and fired. The beam passed through Theros Prime's crust like it was made of paper, reaching deep into the molten center where tectonic forces held the world together. Quantum energy disrupted the planetary magnetic field and destabilized the core's rotation. The planet began to crack. Massive fissures spread across the surface as tectonic plates shifted and collided with impossible violence. Lava geysered into space while earthquakes shattered continents. The northern hemisphere folded inward like a collapsed balloon while the southern hemisphere exploded outward in a shower of molten rock. Walsh watched the destruction through the ship's sensors and felt nothing. 50 years of living in exile had burned away human compassion for their enemies. The Corvan civilians screaming as their world died were no different from the humans who had screamed when Earth burned. The galaxy had taught humanity that mercy was weakness and genocide was just another form of warfare. The remaining Corvan warships tried desperately to engage the Phantom Fleet, but their weapons passed harmlessly through ships that existed partially outside normal space. Plasma bolts and missile salvos struck empty void while the Reapers methodically eliminated every defending vessel. The quantum fold technology made the human ships untouchable ghosts that could strike without fear of retaliation. Rivera activated the ship's communication system as the last Corvan defender exploded into superheated gas. His transmission reached every surviving vessel in the system and beyond, carrying on subspace frequencies that would spread throughout the galaxy within hours. The message was simple and terrible. Humanity had returned from extinction with weapons that could end worlds. The three empires that had destroyed Earth now faced an enemy that existed beyond their understanding of physics and warfare. The debt of humanity demanded payment in blood and worlds. Admiral Zorn of the Corvan Imperial Navy received the transmission aboard his flagship 3 light-years away. The grizzled veteran had fought in dozens of campaigns against rebellious species, but he had never seen anything like the destruction of Theros Prime. His tactical computers could not explain how 12 ships had annihilated an entire star system without taking a single casualty. The security recordings made no sense. The attacking vessels appeared as flickering shadows on the scanner displays, there one moment and gone the next. They seemed to phase in and out of existence like ghosts, becoming solid only long enough to unleash devastation before fading back into nothingness. Zorn immediately dispatched emergency messages to the Mathari Confederation and Viridian Collective. The three empires had maintained an uneasy peace for decades, based on the understanding that any major war would devastate all sides. Now they faced something far worse than each other. They faced an enemy that had learned to wage war in ways they could not comprehend or counter. The Nightfall and its sister ships vanished back into quantum fold space as quickly as they had appeared. The Theros system was left empty except for the expanding debris field that had once been a planet and its defending fleet. No trace remained of the attackers except for the terrible proof of what humanity had become. Rivera settled back in his command chair as reality stabilized around the Reaper vessel. The first strike of humanity's return had been a complete success. The galaxy would soon learn that the species they thought they had exterminated had evolved into something far more dangerous than anything they had faced before. The age of galactic dominion was ending. The age of human vengeance had begun. Fear spread through the galaxy like a virus jumping between star systems. News of Theros Prime's destruction reached every inhabited world within days, carried by terrified merchant crews and military dispatches that spoke of impossible weapons wielded by extinct humans. The three great empires that had ruled space for centuries suddenly found themselves looking over their shoulders at shadows that might hide planet-killing ghosts. Fleet Marshal Kane approved the next phase of operations from his command center deep within Haven Station. The tactical display showed dozens of potential targets scattered across Dominion space, each one marked with the number of alien lives that would be snuffed out when the Reapers arrived. Military bases, research stations, industrial worlds, civilian colonies. Every installation that had contributed to Earth's destruction would pay the same price. Captain Tom Bradley guided the Shadowbane through quantum-fold space toward the Mithari research station at Kepler's Edge. The facility orbited a pulsar whose radiation had been harnessed to power experiments in advanced physics. 3,000 of the galaxy's brightest scientists worked there, pushing the boundaries of knowledge in ways that might eventually threaten humanity's technological advantage. The station's defensive grid activated as the Reaper Squadron materialized from folded space. Energy barriers that could deflect asteroid impacts sprang to life around the facility, while automated weapon systems locked onto targets they could barely detect. The Mithari had learned about quantum fold technology from the Theros incident and deployed countermeasures designed to reveal cloaked vessels. Bradley watched with cold amusement as the alien sensors failed to penetrate the Shadowbane's stealth systems. The Mithari scientists understood the theory behind dimensional phasing, but they lacked the practical experience that came from living in the strange physics of the void reaches. Their countermeasures were like trying to catch moonbeams with a fishing net. The research station died in a ball of superheated plasma as quantum cannons destabilized the pulsar's magnetic field. The stellar remnant's radiation output spiked beyond safe levels, cooking the facility and everyone inside it. Within seconds, 3 millennia of accumulated scientific knowledge vanished along with the beings who had created it. Meanwhile, Captain Rivera led another squadron against the Viridian colony of New Genesis. The world had been terraformed over centuries into a paradise where psychic beings could develop their mental abilities in harmony with nature. Crystalline cities grew like coral formations among forests of exotic plants that responded to thought and emotion. The Viridian defenders tried to use their psychic powers against the attacking fleet. Mind blasts that could shatter starship hulls struck the Reapers like waves hitting a seawall. Telepathic assaults that normally drove enemy crews insane passed harmlessly through ships that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The quantum fold fields that made the vessels invisible also made them immune to mental attacks. Rivera activated the planet-killer weapons without hesitation. New Genesis shuddered as quantum energy tore at its tectonic foundations. The crystalline cities cracked like glass sculptures hit by hammers, while forests withered and died as the planet's magnetic field collapsed. 50 million Viridian civilians perished as their paradise became a tomb. Dr. Santos monitored the attacks from her laboratory aboard Haven Station, making notes on weapon performance and defensive countermeasures. Each strike provided valuable data that helped refine the Shadow Fleet's technology. The quantum fold drives were becoming more efficient, allowing the ships to remain cloaked even while firing their main weapons. The latest batch of Reapers could exist in a state of permanent phase shift, becoming truly ghost-like entities that could pass through solid matter at will. Their crews lived in a strange twilight between dimensions, experiencing reality through quantum-enhanced senses that perceived worlds and stars as patterns of probability rather than fixed objects. Santos had volunteered for the first experimental phase shift procedure, allowing her consciousness to adapt to existence between dimensions. The process changed her in ways she was still discovering. Colors had new meanings. Time flowed in complex spirals rather than straight lines, and she could sense the quantum fluctuations that held the universe together. The alien empires tried desperately to adapt their defenses to counter the phantom menace. Admiral Zorn deployed massive fleets to patrol empty space between known human targets, hoping to intercept the Reapers in transit. His ships waited in formation for weeks, watching their sensors for any sign of quantum disturbance that might herald humanity's arrival. The Reapers simply appeared somewhere else entirely. Captain Bradley materialized the Shadowbane in orbit around the Corvan fortress world of Iron Gate, a planet covered with military installations and defended by orbital weapons platforms the size of cities. The fortress had never fallen to enemy attack in 500 years of warfare. It fell in 12 minutes, Bradley's quantum cannons reached through the planet's crust and destabilized the mantle, turning Iron Gate into a volcanic hellscape where lava flows buried centuries of military fortifications. The orbital platforms, each one armed with enough firepower to sterilize continents, tumbled into the atmosphere as their support pylons melted in the planetary conflagration. The Mythari Confederation tried a different approach, deploying sensor networks throughout their territory that monitored space for quantum fluctuations. Their scientists theorized that the human ships had to create detectable disturbances when transitioning between dimensions. Arrays of delicate instruments swept the void, looking for telltale signatures that would reveal the phantom fleets. Movements. The sensors detected nothing. The Reapers had evolved beyond simple, dimensional phasing into something that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. They were neither fully in normal space nor completely outside it, but rather occupied a superposition of possibilities that collapsed into reality only when they chose to attack. Captain Walsh led a strike against the Mythari manufacturing world of Industria, where automated factories had produced weapons for the Dominion fleets for over a millennium. The planet's surface was covered with industrial complexes that turned raw materials into the tools of conquest. Robotic workers labored endlessly to feed the war machine that had once destroyed Earth. The factories fell silent as quantum disruption waves swept through the planet's computer networks. Every artificial intelligence that had contributed to humanity's genocide was methodically destroyed, their electronic minds wiped from existence. The manufacturing capability that had taken centuries to build crumbled into useless metal and silicon in the space of an hour. The Viridian Collective attempted to negotiate, broadcasting messages across the galaxy offering reparations for the destruction of Earth. Their psychic leaders claimed they could sense the pain and anger driving humanity's campaign of revenge. They promised to make amends for past wrongs. If the killing would only stop, Kane's response was broadcast on every communication frequency in known space. The transmission showed images of Earth's final moments, the blue world burning as alien fleets carried out their systematic extermination. Then it showed the memorial walls on Haven Station with their 8 billion names and faces. There would be no negotiation, no mercy, no surrender. The galaxy had taught humanity that civilizations were either predators or prey, and there was no middle ground. The Dominion empires had chosen their role when they decided Earth was too dangerous to survive. Now they would learn what true danger looked like. The Shadow Fleet dispersed throughout galactic civilization like a plague of mechanical death. Every world that had contributed to Earth's destruction became a target. Every species that had celebrated humanity's extinction faced the same fate they had cheered for others. The hunters had become the hunted, and the prey had evolved into apex predators that struck from dimensions beyond imagination. In the depths of space, new Reaper shipyards came online around Haven Station. The fleet that had started with 12 vessels now numbered in the hundreds, each one more advanced than the last. Humanity's industrial capacity, freed from the constraints of normal physics, grew exponentially as quantum-fold technology enabled resource extraction from parallel dimensions. The galaxy burned, and humanity watched the flames with cold satisfaction. The three alien empires that had once divided the galaxy between them now huddled together in a desperate alliance forged from mutual terror. Fleet Marshal Kane watched their pathetic attempts at cooperation from the command deck of the newest Reaper, a vessel so advanced that it existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. The Shadow Fleet had grown from 12 experimental ships into a force of over 200 planet killers that could strike anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Kane authorized Operation Nemesis with a single thought transmitted through quantum-enhanced neural interfaces. The plan would demonstrate to the surviving alien populations that their Governments could not protect them from humanity's wrath. 3 coordinated strikes against the Empire homeworlds would break the back of galactic civilization and establish humanity as the dominant force in the universe. Commander Rivera prepared for the assault on Corva Prime aboard the Nightfall, now upgraded with weaponry that could manipulate stellar physics. The Corvan capital world sprawled beneath its golden sun, home to 20 billion beings who had never imagined that their empire's victims might someday return for vengeance. Massive orbital defense platforms ringed the planet like a crown of thorns, each one armed with enough firepower to reduce moons to asteroids. The Shadow Fleet materialized from quantum-fold space in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting no light as they arranged themselves around Corva Prime like undertakers, preparing a funeral. Rivera felt no emotion as he studied the planet that had spawned the race responsible for Earth's destruction. The golden cities below had been built on the bones of conquered worlds, their beauty paid for with the blood of enslaved species. Rivera gave the order to commence planetary bombardment. The Nightfall's quantum cannons reached through space and time to destabilize the planet's core, while other Reapers targeted the orbital defense network. The golden platforms that had protected Corva Prime for millennia cracked like eggshells under quantum assault, their fragments raining down on the cities. Below, in streams of molten metal, the planet's crust began to fracture as tectonic forces went haywire under the bombardment. Massive chunks of continental landmasses broke away and spun into orbit, carrying millions of screaming Corvan civilians with them. The golden capital that had once been the jewel of their empire became a collection of floating islands surrounded by debris fields of rock and frozen atmosphere. Simultaneously, Captain Walsh led the assault on Synthura, the Mythari homeworld covered in crystal cities that reached toward the clouds like frozen lightning. The technological paradise had been built over thousands of years by a species that prided itself on scientific advancement and cultural sophistication. Their crystal spires housed the greatest libraries and research centers in the known galaxy. The Mythari defenders activated every defensive system their advanced technology could provide. Energy barriers that could deflect black holes sprang up around their cities while gravitational weapons tried to crush the attacking fleet. Computer viruses designed to infect quantum systems reached out toward the Reapers like digital tentacles seeking electronic minds to corrupt. None of it mattered. The Shadow Fleet had transcended the normal limitations of physics and technology. Walsh watched with satisfaction as the crystal cities shattered under quantum bombardment, their fragments catching the light of Synthura's twin suns as they tumbled toward the planet's surface. Centuries of accumulated knowledge vanished in moments as libraries that had preserved the history of dozens of civilizations became piles of broken glass on the far side of the galaxy. Captain Bradley prepared for the most challenging assault of Operation Nemesis. The Viridian homeworld of Mindspire was not just a planet but a living entity whose psychic network connected every inhabitant in a collective consciousness. The world's crystalline towers served as amplifiers that boosted telepathic abilities across interstellar distances, making the Viridians the most mentally powerful species in known space. The planetary defense began before the Shadow Fleet even arrived. Psychic attacks that could drive entire crews insane reached across dimensions toward the approaching Reapers. Mental forces that had toppled governments and broken armies pressed against the quantum fold barriers protecting the human ships. The collective will of 50 billion Viridian minds focused on the single goal of stopping the phantoms before they could strike. Bradley felt the psychic assault like pressure against his consciousness, but the quantum fields that made his ship invisible also protected his mind from mental intrusion. The Viridians had never encountered enemies who existed partially outside normal spacetime, and their psychic abilities could not affect targets that were not entirely present in their dimensional framework. The Shadowbane's planet-killer weapons fired through folded space directly into Mindspire's core. The world's psychic network screamed as quantum disruption tore through the crystalline amplifier towers, severing the mental connections that bound the planetary consciousness together. Billions of linked minds suddenly found themselves alone. And afraid as their collective identity collapsed into chaos, the planet itself began to die as the quantum weapons destabilized its magnetic field and disrupted the tectonic forces that had shaped its surface for millions of years. The crystal forests that had grown in harmony with Viridian thoughts withered and cracked as the psychic energy that sustained them faded away forever. Fleet. Marshal Kane monitored all three assaults from his command center aboard Haven Station, watching as the symbols of alien power burned in the fires of human vengeance. The homeworlds that had spawned the empires responsible for Earth's destruction were being reduced to broken rocks floating in space. 20 billion years of evolution and progress. Erased in a matter of hours, the surviving leadership of the three empires broadcast desperate pleas for mercy as their civilizations crumbled around them. Admiral Zorn, commanding a refugee fleet, fleeing the ruins of Corva Prime, offered total surrender and reparations beyond measure. The Mythari High Council promised to share all their advanced technology if humanity would only spare their remaining worlds. The Viridian Collective begged for peace while their psychic screams echoed across the galaxy. Kane's response reached every inhabited system through quantum-enhanced communication arrays. His words carried the weight of 50 years of exile and the pain of 8 billion dead humans. The galaxy would learn that mercy was a luxury that only the victorious could afford, and humanity had paid too high a price to show compassion to their former executioners. The three homeworlds finished dying within hours of each other, their destruction coordinated with clockwork precision. The symbols of galactic power became asteroids and debris fields, while their populations either perished in the planetary collapse or fled into exile aboard whatever ships they could find. The empires that had ruled space for millennia became refugee fleets, begging for sanctuary from the very species they had tried to exterminate. Dr. Santos observed the results from her laboratory and began planning the next phase of human expansion. The Shadow Fleet's quantum weapons had proved capable of sterilizing entire star systems without risk to human forces. The technology that had been developed for revenge could now be turned toward conquest and colonization on a scale that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. New Reaper classes were already under construction in the hidden shipyards around Haven Station. Vessels designed not just for war but for the systematic transformation of alien worlds into human colonies. The same quantum technology that could crack planets could also terraform them, turning hostile environments into gardens, suitable for human habitation. The galaxy had taught humanity that survival required becoming apex predators in a universe where weakness meant extinction. The lesson had been learned well, perhaps too well. The species that had once reached for the stars with hope and wonder had evolved into something that the old Earth would barely recognize. But evolution was the price of survival, and humanity had proven they were willing to pay any cost to ensure their species endured. The age of alien dominion was over. The age of human empire had begun, and it would be built on the ashes of worlds that had dared to threaten the children of Earth. The memorial wall on Haven Station had grown longer over the past 2 years. New names joined the 8 billion faces of Earth's dead, but these were not victims of alien genocide. They were human casualties of the Great Expansion explorers, and colonists who died bringing humanity's dominion to distant star systems. Their sacrifice was honored, but their deaths served a purpose that the original memorial could never have imagined. Fleet Marshal Kane no longer needed to hide in the shadows between dimensions. His command ship, the Sovereign, hung in open space above New Terra, a world that had once been the Corvin Military Academy but was now humanity's first major colony beyond the solar system. The planet's surface bore scars from quantum terraforming, where Reaper vessels had reshaped continents and redirected rivers to create an environment suitable for human habitation. 50 million humans now called New Terra home, their cities, rising from the ruins of alien architecture like flowers blooming in a graveyard. The colonists were volunteers from Haven Station who had grown tired of living in artificial habitats and yearned for real soil beneath their feet. They farmed fields where Corvin cadets had once trained for war, raised families and houses built from the recycled metal of enemy warships, Admiral Rivera supervised the expansion into what had once been Mithari space from his flagship above the crystal world of Synthura. The planet's shattered cities had been cleared away and replaced with human settlements that followed more practical architectural principles. Where the aliens had built soaring spires that served no function beyond aesthetics, humans constructed efficient industrial complexes that could support millions of workers and their families. The surviving Mithari population had been relocated to reservation worlds where they could continue their research under human oversight. Their advanced technology was too valuable to waste, even if their species could never again be trusted with independence. They worked on projects assigned by human administrators, their scientific knowledge channeled toward goals that served humanity's expanding empire rather than their own forgotten ambitions. Captain Bradley commanded the pacification fleet operating in former Viridian territory where psychic resistance cells still attempted to organize opposition to human rule. The Viridian survivors had lost their planetary consciousness when Mindspire died, but individual telepaths could still pose a threat to human colonists if they coordinated their abilities. Bradley's ships hunted down these rebel groups with systematic efficiency, using quantum sensors that could detect psychic activity across entire star systems. The rebels never lasted long. Their mental powers, formidable as they were, could not affect enemies who existed partially outside normal spacetime. Human forces could strike from dimensions that telepathic senses could not perceive, eliminating resistance leaders before their followers even knew they were under attack. The survivors were either killed or fitted with neural dampeners that suppressed their psychic abilities permanently. Dr. Santos had established research facilities on a dozen worlds, each one dedicated to pushing the boundaries of quantum technology, even further than before. The principles that had made the Shadow Fleet possible were being applied to civilian applications that promised to revolutionize human civilization. Quantum-fold agriculture could grow crops in parallel dimensions where time moved at different speeds. Dimensional mining operations extracted resources from alternate versions of dead worlds where no sentient species had ever evolved. The technology that had been born from humanity's need for revenge was transforming into the foundation of an empire that spanned multiple realities. Human colonies existed not just on different planets, but in different dimensional phases of the same planets, allowing for population densities that would have been impossible under normal physics. A single world could support billions of inhabitants, living in carefully managed parallel timelines. Santos had undergone further quantum enhancement, procedures that allowed her consciousness to exist simultaneously across 7-dimensional phases. She could observe and direct research projects that span multiple realities, her enhanced mind processing information streams that would have driven unmodified humans insane. The price of such transformation was high, but the benefits to humanity's expansion made it worthwhile. The remnants of the 3 great empires had been reduced to client states that existed solely at human sufferance. Admiral Zorn served as governor of the Corvan reservation systems, his former pride broken by years of watching his people live on charity from their former victims. He enforced human law with the dedication of a convert, knowing that any sign of disloyalty would result in the complete extermination of his species. The Galactic Commerce Network had been rebuilt under human control, with quantum-enhanced ships, carrying goods between star systems at speeds that made old hyperspace technology seem primitive by comparison. Trade routes that had once taken months to traverse could now be completed in days, while dimensional storage systems allowed single vessels to carry cargo volumes that exceeded the capacity of entire fleets. Human merchant princes had replaced alien trade guilds as the dominant economic force in the galaxy. Species that had once looked down on humanity as primitive newcomers now competed desperately for favorable trading agreements with Earth's colonial governments. The tables of power had turned completely, with former masters becoming servants and former victims becoming gods. Kane established the formal Terran hegemony with ceremonies broadcast across every inhabited world in the galaxy. The founding document declared humanity's right to rule based on their demonstrated superiority in the only currency that mattered in the universe, military might. Species that accepted human authority would be protected and allowed to prosper under the new order. Those that resisted would face the same fate as the 3 homeworlds that had burned 2 years earlier. The response from surviving alien civilizations was immediate and unanimous. Formal surrender documents arrived from governments across the galaxy within days of the announcement. Species that had never encountered humanity directly offered tribute and requested protection from other powers that might threaten their worlds. The reputation of the Shadow Fleet had grown in the telling, with stories of phantom ships that could destroy planets becoming legends that kept alien children awake at night. Construction began on humanity's greatest monument, a ring world built around a captured star in the galactic core. The project would take decades to complete, but when finished it would house trillions of humans in an artificial world that dwarfed even the largest planets. The ring would be powered by the star's entire energy output and defended by quantum weapons that could sterilize entire galactic sectors if needed. The engineering challenges were immense. But human technology had advanced to the point where manipulating stellar-scale objects was merely a matter of applying enough quantum-fold energy in the right configuration. The same principles that had made the Reapers invisible to enemy sensors could be used to move stars and planets like pieces on a cosmic chessboard. Rivera led the first expedition beyond the galactic rim, his enhanced fleet pushing into the void between galaxies where new civilizations might be discovered and evaluated for potential threats to human expansion. The quantum-fold drives that had once hidden humanity from their enemies now carried them to distances that no previous galactic power had ever attempted to explore. Early reports from the expedition were promising. Several galaxies showed signs of advanced civilization, with energy signatures that suggested spacefaring species capable of interstellar travel. Whether these distant civilizations would prove to be allies or enemies remained to be seen, but humanity was prepared for either possibility. The Shadow Fleet had taught them that it was better to be feared than loved, and that survival required staying one step ahead of potential threats. The galaxy that had once tried to exterminate humanity now existed to serve human needs. Alien populations worked in factories and farms that fed the growing human empire, their labor directed toward projects that would benefit their new masters rather than their own species. The most talented among them were allowed to contribute to research and development programs, but always under careful supervision and with neural monitoring to prevent sabotage. Children born on human colonies grew up learning the history of Earth's destruction and humanity's rise to dominance. They understood that their comfortable lives had been purchased with the blood of their ancestors and that eternal vigilance was the price of continued survival. These new generations would inherit an empire that spanned multiple galaxies and possessed weapons that could reshape reality itself. Kane stood before the memorial wall one final time before departing for the Ringworld construction site. The faces of 8 billion dead humans looked back at him, their sacrifice honored but not forgotten. The species that had tried to wipe out humanity had learned too late that some wounds never heal and some debts can only be paid in blood. The old Earth was gone forever, reduced to radioactive ash by enemies who feared human potential. But from that ash had risen something far more dangerous than the peaceful explorers who had first reached for the stars. Humanity had learned the galaxy's most important lesson, that survival belonged to the strongest, and that mercy was a luxury that only victors could afford. The age of human dominion stretched ahead like an infinite horizon, full of possibilities that the original human civilization could never have imagined. New worlds would be claimed, new species would be conquered or allied with, and new technologies would push the boundaries of what was possible even further. The galaxy had tried to kill humanity and failed, creating instead an empire that would endure long after the stars themselves grew cold. In the end, the aliens had been right to fear humanity. They simply had not been ruthless enough to finish what they started.